Okay, so what was happening is I'm not sure. I was trying to push the plunger in using this tool, and the trigger mechanism was really stiff coming out. So I ended up taking this against this corner right here, which is pushing against right here. And I tapped down a little bit, and I could see a gap opening up a little bit slightly. So once again, I took this tool, push it in against the plunger through here, tap, tap, tap on this thing, more pushing in, and out, she came right out. So this is very snug. The other thing that I've noticed now is that the plunger itself has rotated on me. I don't know if you could see it here, but I don't know if I can get it here. There's a small flat section in there. And it should be aligned with the top, but in this case it's turned 90 degrees, so it's going to make that very difficult to get out. So I'm going to have to somehow push in on the plunger and get this pin out. There's a spring behind it, so this should be a challenge in itself. I think I have some paper clips here which can be used to push that out. I don't know what I have to actually push against that plunger though. I got a hunk of brass here. This whole thing's probably going to come flying apart on me. Maybe the way I could do it, I do have a small vise. And maybe I can bring the small vise in here. And we can put this little pin into the small vise. And then grab a hold of this. Oh yeah, this is going to be tight. And that's not wanting to move. Oh, there she is. Pin came out, and there's the plunger. Okay, so we've got the pin out. It's rolling around now. Let's get one of these cups over here. Alright, we got another cup. We're going to put the pin in the cup. Here's the first plunger. That's what locks the trigger mechanism into the frame. There's the spring. That's going to be changed to an 8-pound. We're going to go at 8-pound on this thing. And now inside of this thing, and this trigger assembly, there should be one more plunger. There it is. That's what actually pushes it against the trigger. Now if you look at the face of it, it's got a little divot in there. So I don't know if that's showing up here. See if I can bring this up by the camera here. If you look at the face of this thing, maybe I'm too close. Yeah, you can see that the has a little divot in there. So we might take some polish and polish all of this stuff out. Maybe some mothers on a Q-tip that's stuck inside of a Dremel tool. Just put a high sheen on that, because that's probably what the trigger return bar rides in. Any friction you can reduce will make this thing operate smoother. Alright, so we've got that out. I'm going to set the vise off to the side now. And I don't know, there's a lot of stuff here. We got shims for this trigger. So why don't you give me a minute to get things collected here, and this in Smith & Wesson they call this the hand. This is the hand here, and then this in Smith & Wesson they call this the block bar. It actually prevents the hammer from hitting the firing pin. In this case it's a Ruger, and it allows the hammer to push against the firing pin. This area right here, that's the sear of the trigger, and that's not something you want to mess with. Looks like this pin will come out, and we could probably raise that whole trigger assembly right out of this thing. This is the paw. Let's see what happens if we push this pin out. Probably springs are going to go flying everywhere. Alright, another cup. That's not too bad. Out she comes. Alright, the transfer bar comes right out of it. There's a detent right here. This is the hand. This is what allows the hand to have spring tension on it. So the hand just folds forward. See if we can get this on here. The hand just folds forward, and then just behind the hand there's this small plunger. So once the hand folds forward, the hand will slide right off into the cup. Underneath the hand there's a spring and a little plunger into the cup. This is the trigger return bar I was talking about. This bar rides in that little divot I showed you a little bit earlier, so you want that to be a nice smooth transition. So maybe polishing the end of this and polishing the cup on that thing would be a good thing. Once again, this is the sear. This is what controls the drop of the hammer, and not something we're going to touch. This right here is just floating around, so we probably want to get a look at that. We can see it, how it's in there, and it looks like the back end of this thing just comes right up, I think. Yep, she drops right out. Not sure what this is. I'll have to take a look at it. This might operate. Yeah, I think that operates the cylinder lock. So I think this thing here actually actuates the cylinder lock and brings the cylinder lock down. Allows the cylinder to rotate as you're pulling up on the trigger. I don't see no reason to touch the cylinder lock. Looks like the cylinder lock would slide right off of this. Yes, it will. And there's a spring underneath it. We're going to leave that on there for now. And what I'd like to do is see how this, if this is that tight or what the scoop was here. Maybe there's some dirt in here. See if this tell you what, let's take it off. Now there's a spring underneath this thing, so you got to be careful with this. I'm going to guess that spring is just going to want to go flying. maybe we should leave it alone. Okay, there it is. We got it out, and then underneath here, another spring and another plunger. We're going to set this aside in another cup so we don't mix these up. Alright, now we want to see why this thing is so tight. Looks like there's another plunger right here, and this plunger here maybe locks this thing in to the frame. Looks like when I look at it, what they have is this thing has got a little divot. It's a couple of divots around it, so they might peen that thing in. So it might be peened in, and that's what actually locks it. You can see here a little step on the shoulder here. So this is what locks it into the frame. Let's see if this thing goes back in. So right now, without all these springs and things in here, that's probably a yoke. This should go right back in here. And it does. It's snug, but it does it's very snug on this gun. Got this, we don't want this to go flying inside another cup here. Yeah, snug. We'll have to clean this all up. Alright, so that's where we got this apart. See if we can take the tell you what, let's measure the cylinder play, the cylinder gap. Got the feeler gauge right here. Cylinder gap should be somewhere around 6 thousandths. 6 to 10, I think that's what Smith & Wesson goes with. Let's see where we're at here. There's 7. 7 thousandths for a cylinder gap. Yeah, it's snug. Yeah. Let's try the 6. Yeah. Six, no problem. Let's try 7 again. Make 7, 8, 9 out. You know, 7's going in there too. I think 7's where it's at though. If we try 8, I think 8 will be too tight. 8's going in, but only 1/2 of it. Yeah, see, this side of the forcing cone doesn't allow the 8 to go in. Let me see if I can get this on camera here. Let me pull this thing back a little bit. Alright, so when I try the 8 thousandths, 8 thousandths doesn't really go in. You know, 1/2 of it goes in. 7 thousandths is the max I can get for the forcing cone. So that means my forcing cone gap is between 6 and 7 thousandths. And once again, this trigger, I'm not sure. So what we can do is we can drop the cylinder out, work this out. So we can get this all cleaned up real nice now. I'm going to put this in a cup. Alright, we're going to put the trigger in a cup. There's the trigger. This is the paw. Alright, so let me start setting this stuff off to the side. It's not going to get mixed up or damaged. The trigger. There's the hammer. There's the trigger. There's the grip parts. And I think that's it. Oh. The hammer spring, the main spring. Okay, so those are all our parts. One of the things that Salbarajas talks about is taking a 1/4-inch drill bit and running it into this hole. And what he's talking about is it's going to deburr things in this hole. Well, I don't feel anything really catching on anything. Maybe we'll set this up and hit this with some polish. I don't know if this is going to come flying out on me or not. Let's try taking this. Well, I think that's... Alright, so I don't feel any burrs in there. What he talks about is if you're going to use an 8-pound return spring, that if there's any burrs in here, that will cause a funky feeling in the trigger. So I'm going to shut this thing down now, and we're going to get set up for maybe some polishing stuff, polish some stuff out, get the springs changed out, and then we'll attempt to shim this trigger. Alright, so stand by. Okay, one of the things that Sal talked about in his video was to take a drill bit like this, and this is the hole where the plunger was, and you take that and you stick it in there. I did that and I didn't feel anything, but luckily I have this is a 1/4-inch hard Arkansas round stone, 3 inches long. So I had that, and I stuck it in there, and sure as shooting, I could feel burrs. So with this 1/4-inch hard Arkansas round stone, I basically worked it, spun it and worked it in and out, and those burrs are now gone. So that feels smooth to me. So that's an improvement. I'm also thinking about, now that this feels pretty much good, I'm also thinking about, actually I've got a Dremel tool here, and I've got a cotton swab on it. I was thinking of actually running this in and out, this Dremel tool. Let's see if I can get this out a little bit farther. But just kind of running it in there to kind of buff things out. Maybe I'll clean it first and then do that. The other thing I'm looking at, now this is why you want the trigger shims. You probably cannot see this, but and I don't know how to make it so that you can. I'm not that good with this camera yet. But on this trigger housing, if I can get this thing up here and get this thing to focus, there's 2 surfaces on the inside here, and these surfaces are I think this is a sand casting, or an investment casting or whatever, but these surfaces on the inside here are very rough. Now if the trigger were to ride against that, you'd feel that you could, because this is the pivot hole, this is where the pin goes for the trigger. If it rides against that, you'd feel it. Now the advantage here is we got shims. We're going to put shims in here, and we're going to shim the trigger, which means that the trigger will be riding against the shims. But I would like to provide a stable surface for the shim to be on. So I'm going to lightly stone the insides here of this on both sides so that the shims have a nice smooth surface to ride against. And then hence the trigger will have a nice smooth surface. So we're going to clean this hole out here. We already hit it with the hard Arkansas 1/4 inch round stone by 3 inches long, and now we're going to hit it with a buff, and then we're going to hit this with a stone just to provide a flat surface for the shims to ride against. I think that should do it. This is the where the hand. I'm sorry. This is where the cylinder lock rides. Maybe I'll hit that with a buff, a light buff. But I think that's about it for this thing. So let me hit those surfaces. We'll put this thing on hold. We'll get all set up, kind of hit these with the buffs, and we'll see what happens. All right. Okay, so what we did is we got the semi-chrome polish here. This is a wooden stick Q-tip. We cut it down to this length, and we stuck it in a Dremel, and with the semi-chrome on it, we just ran that all the way down through this hole, so you can see it. We ran it all the way down through this hole, just working it around and around. It appears the hole has come out real nice and buffed out. Let's see if we can kind of do this on camera for you. So now we're taking a plain buff or a cotton swab and just kind of working to clean out any residual semi-chrome that would be left in there. But it feels pretty slick. And it looks like a mirror in there. Yeah, I'll try it a little bit more here where I could see what I'm doing. Yeah, this does buff it out really to a high luster here. So I think better than the drill is if you got a hard Arkansas stone, run that in here, and then once you're happy with the stone and the way it feels, maybe take a cotton swab and hit it with some semi-chrome. Now we broke the stick off. Maybe hit a fresh cotton swab here. Put it in here. Lock it up. Yeah, this thing is like a mirror on the inside of this. Alright, so that takes care of that area. Next I want to stone these flats, so I'm going to use I got a small triangular file, hard Arkansas, but those things are so rough that I would like to use a India type stone. And I thought I had one out here. Here's a small India I've got. Alright, so all I'm going to do is come in on these areas, that back up to the trigger. You want to keep it laying flat against the entire surface, and just kind of knock some of those high edges off of this casting. There's that side. You know, you're not looking to make a perfect surface because the shim is going to be setting up against that. So the shim is, you know, what the trigger is actually going to see. So But you want to provide the shim with some type of stable, semi-flat surface. So once you get the stone where it doesn't feel like it's grinding too much. I mean, you can still feel the drag, but once you feel like all those high spots are knocked off, I must say you're pretty much there. If I try this longer one, I might be able to get a little bit more leverage on it. Once again, this is a small triangular file here that we're using. I'm sorry, I got my headlamp on. That might be messing with the camera. Small triangular file that we're using here, and we're using that. I believe this is a 1/4 inch triangular file. Just to take the inside of this thing and kind of smooth things off, so that when the shims ride against this surface, they got some surface that's relatively smooth to ride against, and that actually feels pretty good right there. I use oil. I got some spray oil here. You can use kerosene, you can use oil to kind of clean the ends of the stones off. But once again, you just want to kind of, actually this is looking pretty good. Doesn't take very long, but it's much better than what it was. Alright, let's flip it over. Let's try this other side with the longer stone. All you're trying to do is provide a smooth surface for the shim to ride against. Same thing here. We're a lot better than what it was. Let me turn my headlamp on so I can see a little bit better what I'm doing. When you're doing this, you want to hold that stone as flat as possible against the surface that you're working, so you keep the surface at, you're taking off tenths of thousandths here, so you're keeping the surface as true as possible. Alright, that looks pretty good. Let's give this thing another spray, and maybe we'll hit it now with this Arkansas file. Alright, so this is a hard Arkansas stone. Just trying to provide a nice smooth surface for the shims to ride on. Alright, that feels good. Once again, it's partial feel. It almost feels like there's no sharp edges that you're hitting. So now we've got the area where the trigger rides kind of cleaned up. We've got this area in here where the plunger rides cleaned up. This might be a good time to grab the plunger and buff the ends of that. So stand by one. All right, I'm working on the hammer right now. This is the hammer dog. I took a hard Arkansas stone. I clamped it in this vise along with the top, and I had the angle, the flat angle I was trying to stone parallel to the top. And I just kind of worked the stone. There's still, I didn't take hardly anything off, but I could still see some tooling marks in it. So I'm just trying to shine it up. So now I got the Dremel out, and we got some of this semi-chrome here. I'll put a drop of this stuff on the end here. And on my little cotton stick here. Cotton's kind of worn down, but and now we're just gonna, so this is the surface that'll ride on the trigger. So you'll feel this, those little tooling marks, they look too deep to me to try and get them out. See how this is. And then there's a second angle on this thing that I did not touch. That looks like the final sear. So I'm not going to mess with that. I can hit the front side of this. Let me hit it with the stone a little bit. You just want to lay the stone on there flat and work the existing angle. I don't think anything actually touches this surface here, but again, this is a hard Arkansas stone, so you know, these are basically just polishing stones. Just polishing that surface a little bit. I can see a little bit of a high point right at the very end here. That's about as good as that's going to be. And what I might do is I might change my cotton here. Go to another cotton. I got one here somewhere. Too long. Take some of this stuff here, put it on the very end, put some of the stuff on the cotton, and then buff away. Helps if you turn it on. So this affects the, that's the double action pull right there. Make sure I got no burrs on either side. So this thing is going to be shimmed into the trigger there. So there's going to be shims along either side of this, just to center it and keep it from contacting the inside of the trigger, or I'm sorry, hammer. So right where the pin is, I can see that there's a high point on this side. When I get that flat, because right there is where the shims will go. Maybe I had a different stone here. This is a black Arkansas. I don't know if there's any difference in the grit. Well, it's working the whole side now, so I think that's as true as that's going to be. At the other side again. Oh, there. Close enough. Now, the other thing I was thinking about was the pivot point on the hammer. I'm thinking this could use a little bit of polishing in here. Let's see what happens. Oh, that's broke. Let's try it one more time. You just want this to move really nice on that pin. So a little bit of polish into the inside of that. Close enough. Alright, so now we got to clean this and this, and we can assemble that with the shims. Alright, we'll be back.